Welcome back, folks. It's 27.5 minutes before 8 o'clock. Remember, if you must leave home at this time and get to the office or your place of endeavor, you can continue to monitor the events on Morning Edition by joining us on 87.7 FM or join us online at tv6tnt.com. Well, let's try to get some clarity on a matter here that's taking place at the Cipriani Labour College. The director of the Cipriani Labour College of Labour was recently fired by the chairman of the board of directors at the college. And Dr. Ian Sakura-Lemessy claims he was systematically sabotaged by members of the executive who worked in collusion with the board in order to advance improper financial practices. Well, how often do we hear of that? He joins us in the studio along with union representative Nicole Samuel. Folks, welcome to Morning Edition.
Thank you.
I wish I was seeing you under different circumstances.
Certainly.
But Dr. Lemessy, could you explain exactly what occurred as far as this separation matter is concerned?
First of all, let me thank you for having us here this morning, and I want to echo your sentiments. I was looking in the green room before we came on, and I saw SPCS exposing all the virtues of the work they're doing. And I certainly wish my stay here with you this morning was to discuss some of the positive things at the college. But be that as it may, I think it would be remiss of me if we didn't come here and try to shed some light on what is obviously a very disturbing set of circumstances in the last few weeks that hinge around the implication for my tenure at the college. I concede that the board has claimed that it has terminated my contract before because of performance issues, and I intend to contest that vigorously in a court of law because I think process wasn't properly fulfilled. And I put my record to test that I have done all that was asked of me of the board and perhaps even more, particularly in terms of satisfying the two key stakeholder groups in the college, which are workers and students, which was evident, of course, in the furor that was created when the eminence of my tenure came to the students and workers' attention. So I don't want to go into all the gory details, of course, because of the legal ramification, but I would like to state that I have worked extremely and exceedingly hard under very difficult circumstances to ensure that workers' rights and all that it entails are satisfied, as well as cultivating a climate of learning for students.
But Dr. Lemessy, you also raised a very, very troubling issue with respect to financial practices at the college. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, first of all, I wrote several letters. I wrote to the Board of Governors. I wrote to the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Carl Francis. I also wrote to the Minister of Labor regarding what I consider to be financial irregularities at the institution. And I made a very fundamental claim. All I wanted these authorities to do is to come in and perform an investigation. In one instance, I even called for a forensic investigation to ascertain whether my allegations of financial regulation held merit. I didn't even receive as much as an acknowledgement letter, not from the Minister of Labor, who of course is our line minister, from the board, or from any of the entities to which these allegations were brought to the attention. And I find that extremely disturbing.
And how long ago did you write indicating your concerns with
In February of this year.
In February of this year?
Yes.
So we're talking about 6 months ago.
6 months, give or take.
Give or take a few weeks. And essentially, at the end of the day, you have not received any response to some of these allegations?
Not as much as I say as an acknowledgement letter. And I ask any one of these entities to provide any evidence whatsoever that this matter was raised, that they were dealt with as I had anticipated. The only body that acknowledged receipt to some degree was the HR subcommittee of the board, but I have not received any correspondence whatsoever regarding clarification on these matters. So bear in mind, Mr. Blaze, before you go on, this is a college at the last public accounts hearing. One of the commissioners on that hearing said was the worst case of accounting irregularities he had witnessed at an institution. at one phase in the history of this college, it went 18 years without producing an audited account to the government. And the issue of financial irregularities, the issue of preparing the college to face the obvious Public Accounts Committee hearing in the foreseeable falls under my remit. I'm the Chief Accounting Officer of the college. This is part of my deliverables. So here I am thinking I'm the 19th shining armor riding into town to kind of save the infidels, the masses from the infidels. And instead, I end up on the chopping block.
But how is it that as a Chief Accounting Officer, you essentially are responsible for the financial processes that take place within the college?
Well,
it is entirely within your control, your remit, to ensure that the college observes good governance and good accounting practice as far as its operations are concerned.
Most certainly. In fact, we don't have an executive board. I am the CEO of the organization ostensibly, and we don't have an executive chairman. All the matters regarding the fiscal processes of the college falls under my remit. And I am obligated, if I find any kind of suspicion or evidence of irregularity, I have an obligation to bring it to the respective authorities, whether it be the line minister, the PS, the board, etc., at least for them to investigate whether there are any merit in
but
these
these transactions that you're referring to, in many instances, have to be either vetted by yourself, have to be signed off by yourself at some point in time. How is it possible that there can be transactions taking place at the college, you being the Chief Accounting Officer, and you're unaware of these transactions only to, discover it at some later date?
There's a very interesting analogy, and in fact that's the crux of the matter that I have raised. I was able to provide evidence to these authorities which showed that Mr. Remy, for example, as the chairman of the board, executed contracts, approved payments on said contracts without even seeking my input or my authorization. That's the crux of what I have reported to the ministry and the respective authority. Here you have an executive chairman, while you have while you have a sitting director executing contracts, approving payments, and not on one single instance, and this has happened about half a dozen times, was I, as chairman and director of the college, consulted.
But this must have been done with the consent of the board. I don't think the chairperson, the chairman of the board is acting outside of his remit in that regard. He must have been consulting with the other board members in all of this.
The question of consulting with board members is not the issue. I am the Chief Accounting Officer of the college. The PS is the Chief Accounting Officer of the ministry, our line ministry. Every single penny that is spent at the college must come to my purview.
So is it then that the chairman of the board felt that it was in the interest of the college for the board to take over certain transactions because they were concerned about your performance?
The issue of financial irregularity and performance are two mutually exclusive issues. You economists, you know that. Those are two mutually exclusive issues. Even if that was the case, and it was not based, if you say my performance was not based on financial impropriety, you cannot execute contracts as a board or as a chair without bringing it to a sitting director. You just can't. Doesn't work that way in the public sector. So there's no issue of whether the issue of performance and financial irregularities, those are two mutually exclusive issues. And at a minimum, if I raise these issues, the board, the minister, they all have a fiduciary obligation to listen to the appeal and the call of the CEO of the organization. Let's be very clear on that. This has nothing to do with performance. In fact, I could even make a counter-argument that the issue of performance could have been as a function of me raising those issues.
Well, I mean, I suppose at some point in time we're gonna get to the crux of the matter and really try to figure out exactly what is causing what. So let me invite Ms. Nicole Samuel. She's the branch president for BIGU. They are the representing union for the non-academic support staff at the college. Ms. Samuel, what is your take on all of this?
First, let me explain that the director does not fall within our bargaining unit. However, the workers have some concerns based on the allegations raised because those concerns may or may not touch on the integrity of the institution. And where it touches on the integrity of the institution, then it would have some implication for the working life of workers. Now, workers are concerned with these allegations.
Are you saying that these allegations are of the nature that it could spell the end of the college?
I cannot say that, but I know that there would be serious implication for the institution.
The sustainability of the institution?
Yes, of course. And workers have some concerns. And as the legal representative of the workers, I can raise these concerns. So we are asking for this whole issue to be cleared up. Possibly a forensic audit ought to be done, which would either prove that what the director is saying is wrong, or it may find wrongdoers with regards to the matter.
Now, in all of this, you have been a branch president, a representative of the workers at the college and so on. And you would have been, of course, monitoring the performance of the college over the years, etc. So is it that the college has, in fact, been able to improve its accounting practices? Is it that they have been able to publish audited financial statements in the recent past?
Well, let me explain. For us, we could only judge with what is taking part with the director's performance and other issues at the institution based on the impact on our lives at the institution, our working lives. Now, there have been concerns raised prior to the director with regards to some accusation of improper financial practices. However, workers never had the evidence to support their claims. So now to hear that the chief officer raising these allegations, we think that it needs to be investigated. And with regards to his performance, we have solved a lot of trade work relations dispute, occupational health and safety, and other issues with regards to training. He has clearly removed some of the gap between executive management and workers in terms of fair practice and treatment of workers.
What about compensation issues for the workers?
The compensation issue, we are still working on a 2007 salary. We have been offered a 5%, but the director was the only one who would have set and helped the process to move, so that we have settled all our non-cost items thus far as a result of him moving the process along. But the issue of the 5% still sits on the table. And we know that at this crucial point, we need to have someone at the institution who would aid the process, help the process along. And we are saying that if he is working for the workers, if you are getting positive report from workers, from the students, in terms of how the institution has been able to move forward under his short tenure, then why remove him? So those are serious concerns that we have.
And Dr. Lemessy, in terms of the relationship that you've had with the board, is this the issue that precipitated this unfortunate situation, the issue of financial impropriety or alleged financial impropriety at the college? Or is the issue of performance one of the issues that came up prior to all of this discussion about financial practices and so on?
First of all, I don't think the crux of the matter with regard to my termination hinges solely on the issue of the question of financial irregularities that I raised. In fact, I want to echo the sentiments of Ms. Samuel. Here you had a board on the basis of a rumor that they intended to terminate my tenure at the college, created such an uproar among two key stakeholder groups, the students and the workers. I have, from the moment I arrived at the institution, I was confronted with some extreme cases of a management structure that one could only characterize as anti-work. Now remind you, this is at a school that prides itself for being a labor college and a university that promotes natural justice, promotes advocacy for social justice and so forth. And the first thing I did on assuming the position was reach out to both the union and the student to try to see if I could create a culture of inclusiveness. In fact, if you were to take a poll at the college today, you would find one of the In one instance, it's a strength, but it has also been a criticism that I have tried to work with everyone, including the board. I necessarily don't intend to engage in a tit-for-tat with the board. We've had a very cordial relationship. I think the only exception has been my insistence that I will not support any one political party. I will not engage in the kind of sectarianism that has characterized institutions in this country. And I made it clear to the board and to the chairman when I assumed this position, my training is not in politics. I'm a scholar administrator, and I returned from the United States to assume this position to help to build a university. And that's the only reason that I came here.
But Dr. Lemessy, are you suggesting that to be the director of the college meant that you would have had to espouse some particular political view in order to retain your position as a director?
Not necessarily. One would be naive if one doesn't acknowledge the fact that one of the challenges, particularly in these institutions, is that there are a lot of political intrigue, like I call it palace intrigue. And one of the things, for example, I had resisted is that I found, for example, there was a particular ex-director who I felt exercised too much influence over the decision of the chairman and his execution of his duties. And I made that very clear, that I intend to be part and parcel to no activity that affect my ability to run the college objectively and without fear of political and other interference. Those are some of the concerns I raise with the minister as well, along as those that involve financial irregularities. In fact, I made an argument in some of those reports that I submitted that I found in the awarding of particular contracts, particularly to a particular ex-director, the board nor the chairman followed the financial practices of the college in terms of having open tendering. In two instances, they used what is called a sole tendering procedure just to give these individuals contract. And our procurement rule states explicitly you have to have 3 tenders, you have to have an open bid, and if the service doesn't exist in this jurisdiction, then you could provide a persuasive justification for sole tendering, etc., etc.
So the board didn't abide by its own
tender rules,
procurement rules?
No.
And now the issue again is that the board would make these decisions, and these decisions have to be documented.
Yes.
And these decisions, of course, you are in effect reporting to the Ministry of Labor. That's your line ministry. And all of this information is systematically passed on to the Ministry of Labor.
Well, I don't know how the board pass on this information.
Because they have to report to the line ministry.
But I don't think the line ministry necessarily gets involved in these nitty-gritty about how a contract was procured and so on. That is why I felt it was my responsibility to bring it to the attention of the minister. And all I was asking is for clarity. Do an investigation and find out if there are any merits to these allegations.
Now, in terms of the, is it one particular contract that you're referring to, or is it a series of contracts that you're referring to?
Well, I raised issues with about 6 instances where contracts were procured by the chairman of the board while I'm sitting right in my office a few doors away, and nothing was brought to my attention.
And these contracts relate to what types of services or products or whatever?
Well, the two that concerned me the most was contract for services for consultancy services that were awarded to persons and entities that was known among board members, that is well known in the college, were political affiliates of the chairman, as well as personal affiliates. And all I'm saying, I'm not questioning the competency of the providers. I'm saying if the board knows that this relationship exists, it has a fiduciary obligation to act more judiciously to make sure at least transparency was achieved in the awarding of these contracts. I have an instance right now where one of the contractors received a check for $150,000, cashed it on the 1st of January of this year, and to date, not a single action on that contract has started when the terms of the contract was supposed to end somewhere in March or April in thereabouts.
So clearly there are some issues to be treated with in terms of how procurement is occurring at the college.
Of course.
Now, I just want for you to quickly remind the audience, in terms of your tenure at the college, you are there on a contractual basis. And typically your contracts would run for what, 3 years?
3 years. I have a year left in my contract.
Right. And you're saying that your services have been terminated. This is just your first 3 year
contract.
And your services are basically being terminated at the end of year 2.
Of year 2.
Right. So that brings some clarity to the matter. So you are being remunerated, I'm assuming, based on the terms of your contract for the entire year.
Well, it's interesting that you raised that. I was actually offered a severance package, if you will, to go away silently, for want of a better word, and I choose not to. In fact, I have raised serious concern, even the way my tenure and determination was affected. Here I am going into my 2nd year. As far as I know, I've only had 1 performance evaluation, and I'm being terminated on the basis of performance. This is a person who came to the institution, secured accreditation, did a number of positive things that is so numerous that I'll take up the whole morning trying to delineate. And yet still the board, made up of trade unionists, would exact a termination under such suspicious circumstances that to me it raises, there's something amiss.
All right, well, final question. What's the next step for you?
In terms of?
Where do you go from here with this issue?
Well, one of the things I would like to see, I referred in a recent interview to Cipriani as one of the dirty little secrets of the tertiary education sector. And I would certainly like to see something like either an interministerial committee. I would like to see the Minister of Labor in particular and intervene in some way to shed some light. Because here you have students and workers have the institution almost inoperable because of this issue.
All right.
And I don't want this issue to focus solely on my termination, but to come and look at some of these issues that I have raised.
Dr. Lemessy, thank you so much. Ms. Nicole Samuel, thank you so much for being here. Certainly, I hope we can find some clarity to this matter and bring it to the right conclusion, a conclusion that espouses justice for all involved. Folks, we're going to go to the 8 o'clock news, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up today's session.